Ugh! 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 Oh, good lord, this was a mistake. Hey guys, Jack here, and thank you all so much for clicking and watching this very special episode of the BigJackFilms reviews with a 30th anniversary retrospective of Steven Spielberg's Hook. But man, I gotta tell you, this is the longest episode we've had on record, clocking in at over an hour. I'm not kidding. And because it's so long and it took forever to put together, I have a few people I would like to thank for making this episode possible. First of all, a big thank you to my co-review of this episode, JTIsReborn. If you guys want to go check out his channel, link down below. He's going to start doing movie reviews again, but he mostly focuses on kaiju films, especially the Godzilla franchise. So if you're into that stuff, link down below. And of course, to all of our supporters on Patreon, if you guys want to go donate to the channel, just $1 or more will get you access to all of our content, as well as other special features, and it will help keep the lights on and more productions coming your way. I also want to give a big major thank you to all of the social media platforms and groups that have fan community pages dedicated to the movie Hook. They were a huge help in finding research and deep dives into the behind the scenes on this movie and this episode in general. And as a special bonus, we actually want to do sort of a charity shout out, and that is to the Great Ormond Street Hospital Children's Charity. They're based in London, England, and were actually founded by Peter Pan's own creator, J.M. Barrie. So if you guys want to go donate to their cause, they're a wonderful charity and a wonderful children's foundation. Link down below and help them how you can. Once again, thank you guys so much for waiting on this episode. It took forever to put together, given it's our longest episode to date, and I hope you guys enjoyed the final product. So keep those shares going, like this video, and enjoy the show. The following is a fan-based video review under fair use. Hook is owned by TriStar Pictures, Amblin Entertainment, Sony Pictures, and Steven Spielberg. Please support the official release. Yo ho ho.
Your attention, please. The following is a sub-ether transmission.
Hey, there you are. I've been trying to get a hold of you forever.
Sean? How the hell did you get into my data? For that matter, are you trying to get yourself caught given the restrictions I'm under?
Well, we said fuck it and hacked into the system while all the guards were off duty.
But the computers...
Really? You don't think your friends would respond to a distress signal? We're giving you some more time.
Well, in a crisis, the English always make a cup of tea. Or in this case, a glass of scotch.
You drink scotch?
Why not drink scotch? I got too carried away, Sean. I don't think I'm getting out of this one unscathed. Especially when your past catches up to you.
Speaking of which, I think it's time I tell you at last.
Tell me what?
We went ahead and hacked into the department memory drives and found some rather interesting files. Tell me, Jack, how far back can you remember?
What are you talking about? I remember the hospital, the experiments, the victims who didn't survive, and his face. The face of mortal evil. Watching me.
I see. What about before that?
There was nothing before that. And even so, it's been lost to time from the experiments.
You lost your childhood in some ways, eh? It is, after all, the key to hope and creativity. Then perhaps, Jack, it's time for you to go back to Neverland.
Where?
To Neverland.
Why do you want to send me to Michael Jackson's ranch?
No, you idiot! Listen! We looked into who's running this place. We know who this guy is, and now he's come back to seek his revenge. The fight isn't over for Dr. Nigel Gabor. He wants you back. He knows that you'll go down to the ends of the earth to face down the Dark One, and god damn it, you need to find a way. So maybe it's time for you to go back, to review this thing, for your own sake.
Review what?
Jack, don't you know what's celebrating its 30th anniversary this year? Yes, boy. Yes.
Morphin' time! Dragon Sword! BoomerAng! That's right, I'm all excited, I'm all dressed up, ready to talk about the movie Hook.
Shut the fuck! It's pirate theme, not Power Rangers! Get out of that thing!
Well, we just did the whole training, shifting montage thing, and I had access to the morphing grid. I just wanted to use the Power Rangers suit in the video for once. I never get the chance to, and you know what? Fine, fuck it, I'll get changed. Go to hell. Suck a dick.
Good form, everyone, and welcome back to the BigJackFilms reviews. And today we're... Why do I have this stupid tin thing? Well, anyway, let's talk about the iconic fairy tale simply known as Peter Pan. And what could be said about this classic swashbuckler in green tights? Aside from Robin Hood. In short, the classic tale by J.M. Barrie tells the story of a boy who never grew up, learned to fly, and encountered many adventures and dangers from mermaids, natives, and duels with the most iconic pirate in all of fiction, Captain James Hook, in the magical world of Neverland. Since the story's publishing in the early 1900s, it spawned several adaptations from stage to the silver screen, the first being the 1924 silent film, but even then, the story has been adapted time and time again for movies and TV shows. The most famous adaptations were the 90s cartoon Fox's Peter Pan and the Pirates, which I remember watching as a kid, starring the delicious Tim Curry as Captain Hook, making it 2 legendary pirates under this guy's resume. And of course, the animated classic from Walt Disney himself, which to this day has gone down as the definitive adaptation of J.M. Barrie's work. But today's review is to celebrate the 30th anniversary of my opinion, the definitive film of the Peter Pan myth. And the best part is, it's directed by one of my all-time favorite filmmakers, Steven Spielberg. So myself and the co-host of this review, JTIsReborn, will be discussing the 1991 film that is considered today a childhood classic. Take it away, JT!
Aye, aye, Captain. So, let's all fly away to Steven Spielberg's underrated classic, simply known as Hook.
Acting oddly enough as a sequel to the original Peter Pan story, No, not that one. The film opens with the school play of the classic tale, with the character of Wendy being played by the young daughter of our lead in the movie, Peter Banning, played by the late comedian icon Robin Williams, who seems to be focused on his work than the life of his family and children, including his enthusiastic baseball-playing son Jack, played by Charlie Korsmo.
Jack feels disheartened by his father for missing his final game, as tensions in the family seem high flying to London, where Peter catches up with his adoptive parental figure Wendy, played by Maggie Smith.
Jeez, has she always been this old for the past 30 years? I get the Harry Potter books take place in the 90s, but I guess Maggie Smith was just that good in casting Professor McGonagall.
Actually, Jack, that right there is the old age makeup on Maggie Smith, and for 1991, it's quite impressive and pretty accurate to how Smith looks nowadays.
What? Damn! Eat your heart out, Rick Baker! Anyway, it turns out the myths of Peter Pan actually exist in the movie, with J.M. Barrie basing the book on the stories a young Wendy had told her and creating an orphanage for lost children that Peter himself was involved with as a kid. However, that night as a new wing is being opened in Wendy's honor, Peter's children go missing in a magical yet demonic ball of green light, leaving the family distraught as Wendy finally tells Peter that the myths are indeed true and that Banning is actually the real Peter Pan.
Obviously, Peter thinks Granny Wendy is off her pills, probably thinking that this old dinosaur should be put in a nursing home already, and doesn't believe her. That is until the arrival of the iconic pixie fairy Tinkerbell, played by Julia Roberts, knocks Peter out, taking him off to Neverland. Landing in the pirates' village, it turns out Peter's kids have been kidnapped by the villainous Captain James Hook, played to absolute fucking perfection by Academy Award-winning actor Dustin Hoffman, with the help of his first mate Mr. Smee, played to absolute fucking perfection by the late Bob Hoskins. This time around, Rain Man and Mario's plans is to keep the genie's kids hostage to provoke him into starting what the pirates call the Ultimate War.
Ultimate War? Well, given that fanfiction wording, it sounds more like the Ultimate Showdown. This is the Ultimate Showdown. However, given Peter is out of practice growing up and being away from Neverland for so long, he needs help from the Lost Boys and their understudy leader Rufio, played by Dante Bosco.
Oh good, Peter could probably use a hand from the Fire Nation against the pirates, seeing how he didn't get any from Hook.
Somebody give me a hand.
I already have.
So with 3 days under their belt, a common time limit for fairy tale stories, Peter must learn to remember his happy thoughts in order to fly, fight, and crow to return to being the happy tight-wearing boy who never grew up and face Captain Hook in their final battle for the fate of Peter's kids and Neverland itself. So, Sean and I can probably agree here that Hook is not only a spectacular film on Steven Spielberg's resume, but it's also a childhood classic on all accounts for 90s kids and beyond, being one of my first exposures to the Peter Pan story outside of the Disney film. It not only respects the original story Barrie wrote over 100 years ago, but continues it in a new and creative way as a sequel to any incarnation of the tale. And to this day, despite being a favorite film for a lot of filmgoers, when it came out, it was actually kind of mixed to negative with its reviews, making it much more of an underrated movie for Steven's biography, with even the director himself stating in a recent interview how he doesn't even like his own creation.
I want to see Hook again because I so don't like that movie, and I'm hoping someday I'll see it again and perhaps like some of it.
Steven, do you even know what you're talking about?
When it comes to the movie Hook, I can't remember a time in my life before seeing this film. Hook is one of those special films that I just remember always being a part of my childhood. When I was younger, my family didn't always have the money to go out and do stuff, so I'd often stay home and watch movies on VHS, and Hook is one of those films that I watched quite frequently on VHS, before I eventually wore the tape out. But don't worry, I made sure to buy the movie on Blu-ray and DVD because I love it so much. I still have vivid memories of late nights sitting in front of the TV. I remember the great pirate battles, that scene where Peter starts to use his imagination for the first time. You see all that delicious looking food. I would always get really excited when it built up to the first reveal of Hook. Dustin Hoffman as Captain Hook is really one of my all-time favorite movie villains. I always found him to be both menacing and absolutely hilarious with his dark sense of humor. Come to think of it, I realize that most of my favorite villains have a great sense of dark humor, and I think that might have to do with Dustin Hoffman's performance leaving such an impression on me. Not only that, you have some really great-looking cinematography, some amazing sets, and of course, John Williams' most underrated score of all time. Watching the movie now from an older perspective, I feel like it connects with me even more. Much like Peter in the movie, the further you go along with him in this journey, the more I feel like I myself am connecting with my childhood. It really is quite the experience.
My story around seeing the film for the first time is actually an interesting one. As a kid in the mid-90s, my family and I used to take trips up north to a seclusive cottage over the summers. One of those years, I unfortunately was really sick due to a bad ear infection and spent a few days on the couch.
Maybe you need a Band-Aid. Or a thermometer. Thermometer make it all better. That's how Nibs made the Wendy lady better.
To occupy my time, and to avoid myself puking to death, my parents rented out the film on VHS from a local corner store, and surprisingly enough, the film made enough of an enthusiastic impact on me that it kinda got me out of being sick, and back on my feet again.
Nibs put the thermometer out. Got all that.
It's one of those magical moments where a film can almost heal the wounds of illness and light the sparks of imagination and the joys of childhood on individual viewings, and because of that, I hold the film in a special place in my heart, watching it countless times since, even to the point of wearing out one of my old VHS copies due to repeating my adrenaline for the final battle at the end of the film. And I'm not gonna lie, watching it again, this time for the hell of it on Laserdisc of all things, that feeling of childhood still stays strong, and as an adult, it takes me back to the days of my youth with rich characters, outstanding sets and cinematography, emotional themes in its music, and Spielberg's direction shining through in every scene.
And to that, the characters are not only iconic, but also advanced given this film acts as a sequel to the original story. And who better to catch up on childhood memories than Peter Pan himself, played by Robin Williams, who is truly incredible in this film. He really is the heart and soul of the movie, raising the question that sparked the film itself. What if Peter Pan grew up? These are the consequences the film presents as the core of the story, and we see the struggles and emotional battles Peter faces both mentally and physically. As Peter Banning, he's bitter, selfish, and usually hiding behind a humorous, smart-ass personality that slowly begins to break his sanity and spirit. But once he taps into his memories and becomes Peter Pan once again, in my own personal favorite scene in the movie, it really is like seeing a childhood friend return as you once knew him, and only Robin Williams could pull off all of these traits so seamlessly in one of his most challenging roles.
From his youthful energy to the stunts and fight scenes, Robin stated having a ball making this movie, and from the rare but blooming behind-the-scenes footage being released online, you could clearly see that making his presence both in retrospective and real life sadly still missed to everyone around the world. Robin was a free-spirited man filled with so much comedy and joy that to this day is sorely lacking since his death, and much like everyone else, it broke my heart to see such a beloved icon who kept everyone smiling gone way too soon. But despite him leaving us for the Neverland above, his legacy will keep us all thinking happy thoughts for years to come.
Thank you for believing.
But with all great heroes in this role, they have their rivals, and the title character of the movie, Captain Hook, is iconic and notorious as he's ever been. A lot of people tend to argue about who is the definitive actor to play the hand-bladed captain of the Jolly Roger, from Hans Conried in the Walt Disney classic to the amazing Tim Curry in the Fox cartoon, Jason Isaacs in the 2004 film, and even Jude Law in the upcoming Disney remake. But nobody, and I repeat, absolutely nobody so far has been able to top Dustin Hoffman's performance as the dreaded child killer of Neverland.
I like it, I like it.
Aye, that Sean. Dustin Hoffman owns this part. From the ticking mustache, the teeth, the swords, from the Scottish basket hilt to the fencing court sword. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I've been spending way too much time collecting swords and educating myself on the craft of the blade. And to the outstanding detail in his outlandish costume, Hoffman brings all of this to the table and then some with an intimidating impression. For adults, he's not only the best part of the movie with his humor and charm, but for kids, not gonna lie, even when I was growing up, there's moments where he scared the shit out of me. And as much as we want to roleplay as pirates and pretend, it brings to light that they were once to be feared on the Seven Seas. Despite the captain being a work of fiction, there's no doubt that Dustin's portrayal is the best in the story's filmography, going down ship as one of the most iconic pirates in all of cinema.
Good form! Bravo! Bravo! Isn't that wonderful?
This, of course, leads us to the many supporting characters.
I say that you and I take turns on this one individually to make this review go by faster.
Aye aye, Captain. And hey, it gives us both a break in between to get lunch. And to be honest, there's a lot in this one. Some from established Peter Pan characters from Tinkerbell and Wendy to new characters in the mythos with Rufio among others.
Yes, can I get 3 double quarter pounder with cheese meals? No onion for that.
Hey, what the hell? How'd you get to Earth so quickly?
Oh, I drove back down, Jack. Gotta get my McDonald's.
Your car is a starfighter?
Believe it or not, Jack, all review of our starships have been house designed after the whole pothole debacle.
Huh. Keep forgetting that. Like how I keep forgetting how this movie had a ton of product placements.
Captain Hook will never miss one Coke. Keep it shut. The Lost Boys could be anywhere. Captain Hook! The last Coke in Neverland. McDonald's Hook Happy Meal, based on a new movie. There's Peter Pan, a mermaid that swims, Hook himself, or a Lost Boy squirter. One with each $1.99 hamburger Happy Meal you buy your kids.
Hasta vista, Hook.
Hey, what can I say? 90s commercialism was essentially my childhood. I guess we'll start with Peter's kids, Maggie and Jack. And while there are tons of child actors in this movie, given this is a Spielberg-directed film, all of the child actors do a fantastic job, especially Peter's kids. While Maggie is put to the side later on in the film, she does come off as the more innocent of the two, but strong enough to hold her own conscience against the pirates, from soothing them with a song to talking smack to Captain Hook himself, especially in the classroom scene. Both her and Hoffman are absolutely hilarious in this scene.
You're a liar!
Lie? Me? Ha 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 ha! Never. The truth is far too much fun.
Jack, on the other hand, is the heart and soul of Peter's mission. From the start of the movie, you can see the struggles Peter and Jack's relationship is currently in, and gives Peter one last chance to redeem his failures, and to be the father Jack wants him to be. But it's confronted with a massive sadistic move by Captain Hook, by converting Jack as his own son as a stab to the heart to his arch enemy, and the tensions become so much higher because we know when Hook is done with Jack, he'll probably kill him, making him much more of a despicable villain that you root for Peter to finally defeat. And with such a deep storyline, Charlie Korsmo does fantastic work under Steven's direction. Although, fun fact, he almost didn't get the role. Outside of the likes of even Leonardo DiCaprio auditioning for the role of Jack, Charlie actually tied it with actor Joseph Mazzello, who Steven declined the role of Jack, but later put him in the role of Tim Murphy in his next film, Jurassic Park.
In the role of Granny Wendy, we have Maggie Smith, who does a really great job in the role. Her performance is so genuine, and it's easy to see why everyone around her in this movie admires her. She has a sense of warmth and sweetness to her, but also a bit of a mysterious quality to her. She has a lot that she has to play with all at once, and does it so seamlessly. You can see that Wendy has had this real love for Peter, and you can feel the heartbreak knowing she grew old and couldn't go on any adventures with him anymore. Also, how weird must that be, knowing that you grow old, and the boy that you were once in love with falls with your own granddaughter and marries her? That's gotta mess with your head. On top of that, he forgets everything about his past and basically became everything Peter Pan wasn't, losing sight of who he once was. But Wendy is essential in helping Peter to rediscover who he once was, and without her, Peter wouldn't have been able to complete his character arc.
So, Peter, you've become a pirate.
Aside from her, there's also Toodles, who is pretty cuckoo throughout the movie, spouting dialogue that most of the other characters find to be kind of crazy. But I'll admit, he does have one of the funniest jokes in the movie.
Remember, you're in England, land of good manners.
Uncle Toodles.
It's snowing!
Fun fact, I actually did that to a bunch of trick-or-treaters on Halloween night when it actually snowed. Canadian weather is fucked up. Tinkerbell in this movie, I know a lot of people are mixed on, especially with the casting of Julia Roberts, but honestly, I think she's one of the best actresses to play the classic fairy. She honestly gives a lot more heart and weight to the character that most don't really focus on due to other incarnations keeping her mostly a mute. I felt giving her dialogue actually helped humanize her with the audience, and we see more why she's so protective of Peter in their previous adventures. It was because over time she had feelings for Peter, and this movie finally kinda answered a long questioning understanding of their relationship, which for Tink is a tragic dream.
This is the only wish I ever wished for myself.
A lot of this has to be credited to, believe it or not, the late Carrie Fisher, who actually rewrote a lot of Tink's dialogue for Spielberg. And hey, she even made a cameo with George Lucas as a couple kissing on the bridge, hovering by Tinkerbell's pixie dust.
And you went to the Playboy Mansion.
I've been to the Playboy Mansion a few times.
I know, it was on television.
Yeah,
you were supposed to meet me.
When it comes to the Lost Boys, no, not those Lost Boys. Although, now that I think about it, how much more awesome would this movie be if we had those Lost Boys in this film?
I really want to apologize.
Unfortunately, most of them just kind of fade into the background. Most of them aren't really given a lot to do, and even though I've seen this movie countless times, I kind of forget who is who with most of them. The child actors, for the most part, do a pretty decent job, but there just isn't enough screen time for most of them to stand out. You have Thudbutt, who is mostly relegated to fat jokes. Pockets has that one scene where he's the first to recognize Peter, which is a very nice and touching scene, but that's kind of it. Then you have the other Lost Boys who are just kind of there and don't really do much. However, there is still one of the Lost Boys who I have yet to mention that everyone who has seen this movie remembers, and he is really awesome. So I'll let Jack take it from here.
One of the best new characters introduced in this film is the skunk-headed inheritor to Peter Pan's leadership with the badass punk lost boy, Rufio. And man, oh man, this guy is awesome. What else is there to say? It's Dante Bosco, it's Prince Zuko, it's that kid shouting at Stacy in a Goofy movie. I'm not kidding.
Yo, Stacy! Talk to me, talk to me, talk to me, baby!
Rufio is one of the coolest new additions to the Peter Pan mythology, and deservingly so, and Dante Bosco stands toe-to-toe with Robin in arguably his most iconic role. And what makes his character great is the feeling of the amount of history in a post-Peter Pan Neverland, from taking over for the Lost Boys, the change in cultures and games from skateboarding and basketball making his character more than likely a child of the 80s, and a sense of tension he brings to the final battle with the pirates, especially with Captain Hook, who it looks to the villainous captain as a red thorn in his side that, while not as much as Peter, made for a decent time killer in Neverland until his true nemesis returned.
I'm tired of killing Indians and Lost Boys. I've been killing them most of my life.
Throughout the movie, there's a bit of a rivalry between Peter and Rufio. A lot of time has passed since Peter was last in Neverland, and Rufio has held the fort down since then. I can only imagine how tough it must have been since Peter has been gone. There's a bit of resentment in Rufio when he first sees the grown-up Peter. He doesn't believe this guy is the Pan, and he also is a bit defensive over the title of leader. He was given Peter's sword. It means a lot to him. After Peter gets his memory back, and probably the best scene in the movie, Rufio hands him the sword of Pan, in quite a powerful moment where the two reconcile and celebrate and triumph together. It's a really good payoff to their initial rivalry, and seeing the two of them celebrate together is great.
I actually got to meet Dante Bosco recently at Fan Expo Canada in October, and he's such a genuine personality and a really nice guy. If y'all ever get a chance to meet him, I'd highly recommend it.
Eat your heart out, you crinkled, wrinkled, fat hag!
Now, aside from Captain Hook himself, his scallywag crew of pirates are also a lot of fun on screen, and most notably with the first mate Smee. While several incarnations followed Hook through thick and thin, honestly, Bob Hoskins is one of the greats in the actors who have played the character, and that mostly comes from the chemistry with the two as a duo.
Hey, do something intelligent!
Which secretly on set, both Hoffman and Hoskins really took time to work on, and it turns out without anyone noticing, they actually were secretly playing it off as a gay couple.
I'm sorry, how's you feel now? I want to die. Oh, no.
While it's subtle most of the time, it just makes their scenes together so much funnier in context. However, a behind-the-scenes rumor was that they played it off so much that when TriStar executives started catching wind on the tone, they told the two to cut it out. But whichever the case, it worked, making their scenes some of the best comedy in the film. Need I say more about how goddamn funny this particular scene is?
My finger's on the trigger. Don't try to stop me, Smee. Oh, not again. Don't you dare try to stop me this time, Smee. Try to stop me. Smee, you better get up off your ass. Get over here, Smee. This is not a joke. I'm committing suicide.
The comedy in this movie is absolutely hilarious. These are pirates, so there is definitely this great sense of dark humor to it, with the funniest part being during the baseball game.
He's stealing second!
I laugh every single time this happens.
Very violent sport, isn't it, baseball?
Another funny example is when Hook confronts one of the pirates who bet against him bringing Pan back to Neverland and sentences them to the boo box.
The boo box.
Believe it or not, the pirate in the scene is actually played by Glenn Close of all people. That's right, Cruella de Vil herself faced off with Captain Hook, and you didn't even realize it. Come to think of it, there's actually quite a bit of cameos in this movie. Glenn Close, George Lucas, Carrie Fisher, Phil freaking Collins.
I've forgotten how to fly.
David Crosby, and apparently Jimmy Buffett is in there too. Now I can see why all the pirates are drunk all the time. They're getting wasted in Margaritaville. Wasting away again in Neverland. Searching for my long lost happy thoughts.
Man, with all those musical talents, you swear they tried to get Billy Joel in there. Fly through the air just like Peter Pan, off to Neverland.
Hey, you didn't put in the D.
You're a D. And And with the amount of comedy and characters to go around, the other massive achievement to me in this film is the set designs. And I'm not gonna lie when I say next to Ridley Scott's Legend, this may be the movie with some of the best sets I've ever seen on film, which turns out had to be built on some of the largest sound stages in Hollywood, taking up almost every space imaginable. The Neverland sets are wonderful to see, with the Lost Boys lair ranging from winter, fall, summer, and tons of set pieces with the slingshot pool, the tree forts, and the dining scene, which, can we talk about that scene?
Oh yeah, for sure. The dinner scene is one of the most pivotal points in the film, not just for the characters, but for how it is presented. It makes you wonder at first what the hell these kids are eating that just looks so goddamn good. And it even gives Robin Williams the chance to showcase some of his best humor in the movie.
Munching on your own mucus, suffering from Peter Pan envy!
Eat what? There's nothing here. Gandhi ate more than this.
Rufio, if I'm a maggot burger, why don't you just eat me? It's a one-cell critter with no brain that can't fly! Don't mess with me, man! I'm a lawyer!
Actually, behind the scenes when the food fight started, the majority of the food thrown at the kids in the close-ups was done by Steven and Robin themselves, which honestly from the footage looked like it was a lot of fun to shoot.
all right. Every parent should do this.
And with a combination of iconic Nickelodeon-esque insults,
You are a fart factory.
it leads to Peter's abilities finally being unlocked, creating one of the most mouth-watering dinner scenes in cinema with some of the most rewarding responses.
You're doing it.
Doing what?
Using your imagination, Peter. You're doing it, Peter. Look, you're doing it.
God damn it, I'm hungry now! Thanks, Hook, you made me go and order McDonald's just like Sean did. Oh, so good! Holy shit, I want a fucking sandwich!
Fuck, where's my Monopoly piece? This is bullshit! You know what? Fuck McDonald's. Piece of shit all over the...
No, please.
Are you eating that?
Oh. Nothing beats and never food simply known as McDonald's. Actually, fun fact about the ending of the dining scene. When Peter brings the sword up and the blade's ring is somewhat echoed through the presence of Neverland, that's actually the same sound effect they used for E.T.'s magic healing touch. A nice little nod to another Spielberg classic. However, the best set, in my opinion, is the Pirate Village. I don't think I've ever seen a set so detailed and massive on film to this scale, because the entire damn thing is so big you swear they shot it outdoors. But, no joke, they actually shot it in the sound stages, which is so awe-inducing, wondering how they could cram so much detail and set building in the stage. Not just the village and buildings themselves, but the frickin' Jolly Roger is there to scale. Jesus, was this built in a stadium? There's no way such a massive set could have been built like that. It's no wonder so many celebrities made cameos in the film. They just wanted to visit the fucking sets and be in awe by them.
Well, what do you expect from the old MGM soundstage where The Wizard of Oz was shot?
Oh my god, really?
Yeah, turns out the Pirate Village was built on stage 27, which housed Munchkinland in the film.
Huh, now I can see why the scene looks so familiar. On top of that, the Pirate Docks, along with the Jolly Roger, were also built in the soundstage where they shot the Emerald City. Next to the likes of Ridley Scott's Legend, I don't think I've ever seen a set with so much detail in its quality. Every nick and cranny on all the sets is wonderfully shown on screen. Gold treasures, swords, fabrics, and all kinds of stuff is all there to make you believe the established world of Neverland. Even the cast and crew felt like they should have just left it there or placed it in the studio to essentially have their own theme park. Yeah, eat your heart out, Universal!
Another amazing attention to detail in this movie is the costume designs by the work of the late Anthony Powell, who unfortunately passed away this year, and his contributions I even think made the film iconic in its look. Captain Hook's costume definitely took the look of the Disney film and gave it a massive overhaul in the looks. The entire outfit that Dustin puts on just looks unbelievable when it's all put together.
How did you ever manage to fit into those smashing tights again, Peter?
Now, some might see the costumes looking very familiar to another Seafaring movie made a few years ago prior with Roman Polanski's Pirates. And it's kinda hard not to make comparisons since Anthony worked on both movies. I guess it was a more cost-effective idea if they reused costumes from that movie, but even if they did, Hook is a superior film to use those amazing pieces. Even Hook's hook, designed by Tony Swatton, is easily the most iconic prop in the film. Next to the pan sword.
It's Pan's battle sword. Against Hook's tri-hook.
She can't resist. Never! Bad form, bad breath. Face my dagger.
And the battle rages on. Hook accessories sold separately, new from Mattel.
This is probably the first time in the mythology that Peter was given his own unique weapon outside of the dagger, which, when fighting Hook in previous movies, always bugged me. What the hell is that little thing made of to hold back such a massive rapier? Anyways, the sword is an amazing design with its gold blade and coconut-esque top guard. Fun fact, Dante Bosco even owns one of the prop swords after stealing it on set. It's actually the sword he used to draw a line in the sand. Yeah, you gotta remember, feature filmmakers, when you're building a prop, you gotta multiply that prop, because there's no telling if it's gonna break, snap, or be made out of a different material for safety reasons.
I had to teach them, if that was the sword, to stop before they touched, because the blades were breaking. We broke so many blades, they just kept snapping.
All of this and more, for good reason, was how the costume designs, along with the production itself, visual effects, makeup, and music were all nominated for Academy Awards for their efforts. And, of course, the visual effects were once again provided by Industrial Light and Magic, who handled a lot of practical effects, surprisingly enough. Remember, this was 2 years before the CGI revolution of Jurassic Park, which Steven jumped onto right away as his next project, so this was one of the last films to utilize the traditional way of visual effects and compositing before the easy street of digital technology. From models, matte paintings, and chemical compositions of blue screen effects, the work of ILM still looks great to this day. Hell, some of the visual effects actually used very early CGI. And to be honest, it's hardly even noticeable given the computer programs weren't fully there at the time. They actually do match up with the other effects in the movie.
As a fan of Superman the movie, it wouldn't surprise me if Robin Williams went to his best friend Christopher Reeve for guidance on the amount of wire work he had to do on set and shooting scenes on blue screen, all of which look fantastic. Nowadays, these shots would be handled with CGI, but this movie, along with the 2003 Peter Pan, which we'll briefly mention later on, are pretty much the only two Peter Pan movies that really took advantage of high-class wire work. The effects even reached the likes of the sets themselves to make Tinkerbell small by making the sets and props oversized, which is a brilliant example of practicality to make the movie look more believable.
Well, speaking of Peter Pan as a whole, the backstory behind this film has a long-ass prologue to discuss. Spielberg found a close personal connection to the Peter Pan story from his own childhood by actually directing a school play when he was a kid. The troubled relationship between Peter and Jack in the film echoed Spielberg's relationship with his own father with previous Spielberg films, subtly discussing his personal story with E.T. and Steven's prior film Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. But Steven's idea started working with Disney in the early 80s, believe it or not. After missing out on E.T., Disney desperately wanted to work with Steven given his fame and box office record at the time.
Somehow, they were always destined to meet. Director Steven Spielberg and Peter Pan.
Originally, it was conceptualized as a straight-up musical adaptation of the Disney classic in live-action form. And even the casting of Peter Pan was already considered to go to, of all people, Michael Jackson.
Look at me, I'm Peter Pan, Shamona. I'm a little boy forever. Hey!
Who was just starting to become a massive superstar with his solo records after leaving the Jackson 5. I find the concept interesting had Michael been casted. This was before the system turned on him and his more obsessive interest in Peter Pan came into play when he created Neverland Ranch.
You don't want to grow up.
No, I am Peter Pan.
No, you're not. You're Michael Jackson.
I'm Peter Pan in my heart.
Dustin Hoffman was casted as Captain Hook from the very beginning, though understudies also included the likes of Donald Sutherland, Christopher Lloyd, and David Bowie, probably due to his work with Stevens' pal George Lucas on Labyrinth. Sha-la-la! But by the mid-1980s, when production moved to Paramount, Steven left the project due to the birth of his first son, which I think contributed to Steven's later changes in the script to make Peter an adult and the responsibilities as a father. With Steven off duty, Paramount turned to Nick Castle as a director, whose resume included The Last Starfighter and The Boy Who Could Fly. No consonants there. Oh, and he was also Michael Myers too. Just thought I'd mention it. But by 1989, Paramount handed the project over to TriStar, now known as Sony, and by that point, Steven had interest in returning to the project, which Nick Castle got a reasonable release payment and credit as one of the head writers. Though one of the film's biggest contributions in the entire production was, believe it or not, Princess Diana. Wait, what? Jack? Are you sure there isn't a typo in the script here? Really? Princess Diana?
Yeah, that's a bit of trivia that not many people bring up in previous retrospectives of this film. Her and her future affaired husband at the time, Dottie Fade, were highly charitable contributors to the Great Ormond Street Hospital, who were supported by Peter Pan's creator, J.M. Barrie. Dottie at the time was a major executive producer on the film, and it's possible that the subplot of Wendy Darling's wing at the Ormond Hospital was added to pay tribute to the contributions Diana and Dottie made. Hell, how haunting is it that Peter's wife Moira, along with Mrs. Darling in the 2003 film, look like mirror images of the Princess of Wales herself?
She looks like an angel.
Diana even helped with a charity drive at the time of the film's release, attending one of the premieres, having been a big admirer of Steven's work.
The film's budget was quite a massive one, given all the amount of production designs at $70 million, and when released during the Christmas season of 1991, it made $300 million worldwide, which made it a massive success for the studio, but critics at the time, much like Jack's favorite movie Legend, were mixed on the movie, saying its visuals were outstanding, but the story lacked anything new to the Peter Pan myth, which Jack and I totally disagree on.
Steven Spielberg, I'm afraid, may have grown up himself, because in this picture, I think he's so much better portraying adults now than he is kids. A surprising thumbs down, at least surprising to me based on my expectations for this picture, on Hook.
And I give it thumbs down too. You know, there's a truism in Hollywood that at some point executives start making movies that are really their own life story. And here what you have is a guy who's very successful, surrounded by big business, but is told that he has to recapture his youth in order to be successful. And that may be the way that Steven Spielberg feels, and it may be the reason he made this story, which is unbelievably cumbersome.
You man! Stupid man!
It takes a concept that no one ever considered doing. What if Peter Pan grew up and actually delivered on the concept with flying colors, both as a standalone story and as a sequel to the original Peter Pan tale, both book and films? If you took, say, the original Disney film or the 2003 film, along with the direct-to-video / theatrically released sequel Return to Neverland, Hook really acts as the third installment of what is essentially an unintentional trilogy as the final chapter of Peter and Hook's story, making the film hold up as a more in-depth tale of these old, fabled rival characters.
Much like Steven's editing tradition with Michael Kahn on every film he's made, it's of course the always reliable John Williams to compose what I believe to be his most underrated scores and one of my personal favorites of the master's work. He brings in his whimsical motifs at full force in The Adventures in Neverland and, in a way, homages the works of Disney in the score itself. Originally working on the film when Steven planned it as a musical, he actually contributed a ton of songs to the project, with only a few making it into the final film. While a major blow for the master and not what was intended, the songs do play appropriately for the film with We Don't Want to Grow Up as part of Maggie's school play, and When You're Alone when she sings to the Pirates, which was also nominated for an Academy Award.
Is a gift the angel sent when you're alone.
It's a nice scene and all, but I'm not gonna lie, it's not really an impactful factor to the film itself, making it one of the movie's weaker moments.
I agree with Jack that the score is one of John's most underrated. His themes in the film add that real sense of adventure and fun. The main theme especially coming off as almost a ballad duel between the Peter Pan theme and the Captain Hook theme. It's got a bit of that classic Superman spunk to it that makes you believe that you just got done snorting a ton of pixie dust and are flying high alongside Peter Pan on his next great adventure.
Fun fact on the main theme, when video game composer David Weiss did the score to Donkey Kong Country 2 on Super Nintendo, he based its main theme on the score to Hook as a tribute to the film. And honestly, the score to Donkey Kong Country 2, I'd say is something even the games released for the movie itself couldn't even replicate.
While the main Flights to Neverland theme is my favorite bit of music in the film, I also really love the other music, especially the main theme to Hook himself, combining a sense of tyrannical piracy and the wit and sinister planning of the captain's vengeance for Peter.
I agree, Sean. Hell, I even like the variant played when he takes Jack to the clock museum. It's so sinister and villainous. Actually, fun fact about this clock museum scene. When Hook tells Jack the tale of a notorious pirate named Barbecue Sauce, he's actually talking about Long John Silver. Yeah, that Long John Silver from Treasure Island.
I smashed this clock immediately after I gutted him.
And his shipmate, such a pretty bonfire.
You're such a pretty.
Holy shit! Hook killed Long John Silver! Tim Curry killed Tim Curry!
Thy worst enemy is thyself.
Even small themes are wonderfully played in minor bits. For example, when Hook tries to show some compassion and respect for Jack after Peter bests him, there's a bit more heroism to Hook's character in the music, as if his past life as a pirate was more adventurous and less lethal.
That's an interesting point, Jack. It makes you really want to see a prequel to this guy and how he became such a notorious pirate of fiction. Not like that piece of shit Pan movie that they released a few years ago.
You mean the one where all the pirates sing "It Smells Like Teen Spirit"? Okay, cover tracks aside being kinda kick-ass, but what in the Peter fucking Flying Pan was that movie?
I'm not Peter Pan.
Or even with the upcoming live-action adaptation of Peter Pan Disney's producing with Jude Law in the lead, but more so on the captain's earlier sea voyages upon the Jolly Roger.
Maybe even a Pirates of the Caribbean entry can explain his backstory. Perhaps even it was Jack Sparrow himself that kicked him into Neverland. Hook versus Sparrow! How is that not a movie?
Though while John's score is definitely underrated, there's some tracks that he seems to use both before and after this film, from Home Alone to Harry Potter. Heck, even the main Flights to Neverland theme reminds me a bit of the Anakin and Padme love theme from Attack of the Clones. Also, Tinkerbell's theme sounds very similar to the theme from Home Alone. Here, take a listen.
Yeah, this was a pretty busy time for John Williams at this point, where some of his scores felt like they were done on the quick half the time. Hell, to promote the movie, they used John's score to The Witches of Eastwick. The tone of the music felt less Captain Hook and more Captain Jack Sparrow. And while the dining scene is great, the music makes me think I'm about to dine in Hogwarts for some reason.
Welcome to another year at Hogwarts.
But one of the biggest compliments to the score is just how frickin' emotional it is when you look into the film's psychology and the emotional impact the film has had for 30 years. One of the most impactful is when Peter finds his happy thought and he just soars through the air all the way up to when he is reunited as the Pan by Rufio. The welting of a victorious feeling just takes over, knowing that the boy who never grew up has finally returned home.
You can fly, you can fight, and you can...
For me, however, the most emotional track comes from when the boy examines Peter's face. With a mix of John's music and the innocent flute motifs, to the knowledge of Robin Williams no longer with us, and to the extent kids who grew up with this movie now reaching adulthood, the emotions all build up to a tear-jerking feeling of what it was like to have the innocence of childhood, and the film at this moment nails those feelings hard. The last time I watched this film, it broke me, and I ended up crying like crazy.
The score is easy to find and was released multiple times and is a perfect listen to on its own, especially come the final act. The music vibe is on par with the classic swashbucklers of Errol Flynn and the Seahawk or Captain Blood. I find myself listening to the score quite a bit.
This of course leads us to, for me personally, my favorite part of the film with the ultimate war. Good God, I love this frickin' climax! When I was a kid, this was one of those film moments where I wore out the tape watching the entire battle over and over again. The Ultimate War is not only a fun, flashy set of sword stunts and spectacle, but one of the best pirate battles ever put to the silver screen without a break or pause, and definitely earned. With the film clocking in at just over 2 hours, it gives us a lot of entertainment that, while sprinkled and enjoyed throughout the film, a full force of enjoyment. I know a lot of people complain about the final act because it becomes cliche and safe with the Peter Pan formula, but really, I don't give a fuck because this battle is awesome! It takes full advantage of everything on Soundstage 27, among the other stages on the Sony lot. And we see the magnitude of combatants presented, from the Lost Boys to the army of pirates and scallywags, in a massive clash of arms and steel.
Remember the fires from hell that forged you!
The humorous gags land perfectly and give the battle some much needed light in an overall violent scene of chaos. I even remember watching the scene later on in a summer camp, and because of early bedtimes, they actually had to stop the movie right when the battle happened, and it pissed everybody off.
I want my war!
And on top of that, based on the looks of the cast and crew, it just looks like a huge party. For the Lost Boys, and especially Robin Williams, it was a dream come true.
As we went on, it just got to be more and more fun. And by the end, it was literally like, come on! Come on! And they said at the end they wanted to kind of stop for fear that I really would kind of start like, break out. Because it was a blast. It was, I start to think about it and I get like, my eyes get like, and I get that.
I think all of us at one point had that childhood dream to be in the excitement of a swashbuckling adventure, swinging on ropes and fighting a few bloodthirsty pirates.
Don't you love it, matey? Once you shed blood and dole out cruelty, it's all to stop. Ah, it's a pirate's life, my lad.
And the film gives the audience that dream in its cinematography, the mass amount of extras, along with the outstanding stunt work and fight choreography by swordmasters Jane Bryan and Dan Speaker.
Not to mention the insane variety of prop weapons used, and if you're a sword collector like myself who learned every name of each blade on screen, it's like a fun game of Where's Waldo. You look at this guy, oh, he's got a long-bladed saber. You look at Rufio, oh, he's obtained a double-disc cutlass. You look at Captain Hook,
prepare to meet thy doom.
Holy shit, he's got a Scottish basket hilt. How's he gonna use that thing? Oh, he just traded it in for a court sword. I guess it was more of a fashion piece. Although for history buffs, the court sword was the primary weapon of choice for one president of the United States, George motherfucking Washington. In fact, a museum in DC dedicated to George Washington actually has an exhibit called the 7 Swords of Washington. Yeah, eat your heart out, 7th Samurai or any other anime character that has 20,000 fucking swords on his backside. Washington was rocking that shit before it was cool.
Who needs 3 swords?
Why do I bring this up in a review of Hook? I don't know, when the fuck am I ever going to talk about George Washington ever again? Maybe next time I'll talk about Captain John Paul Jones, aka America's greatest notorious pirate to ever sail the 7 seas!
And speaking of which, this leads to the final showdown with Captain Hook, not just with Peter Pan, but even when Rufio takes him on. It kind of shows that since Peter Pan left, that Rufio was Hook's main punching bag until his true enemy returned. Their eye contact showed that they probably had a more violent game of death with each other, and with Hook taunting the Lost Warrior and Rufio's eyes fixed on Hook to prove that he's worthy to Peter, it leads to one of the best sword fights in the film.
Dante Bosco had trained for 2 months in the choreography to prepare for this sequence, and even today, he still frickin' got it. I'd highly recommend the Academy of Theatrical Combat's YouTube channel, hosted by the film's original sword masters, and see the amount of work these guys do to train actors on stage combat. It's actually really fascinating to watch.
20 years in the making still feels good.
But as for Rufio, I think the maestro from By the Sword said it best.
It was a game to him.
Looky, looky, I got hooky.
And the one moment in his life when it wasn't a game, he lost.
Hook, no! Yeah, so, spoilers, but Rufio dies. Captain Hook just killed a kid. You don't see that in any other Peter Pan movie to this extent, and this scene still remains one of the biggest film traumas for 80s and 90s kids on par with the drowning of Artax and the death of Littlefoot's mother in Land Before Time.
Though another behind-the-scenes fact on the final battle, even though it was in the script of Rufio's fate, Speilberg actually didn't want to shoot it. In fact, the entire fight scene was saved at the 11th hour of filming on the Jolly Roger set. But when executive producer Kathleen Kennedy, yes, that Kathleen Kennedy, got word of Steven stalling Dante's final scene, she put her foot down and told Steven to just film the fucking thing. Say what you will about Kathleen Kennedy, but that scene eventually did pay off in leaving much more of an impact and suspense to the climax itself.
Rufio's death left a lot of us kids devastated, and we felt the awe of revenge for Peter to end Captain Hook's reign of terror within Neverland once and for all in the final duel.
You better die, Peter.
To die would be a great adventure.
Death is the only adventure you have left.
From the explosive squibs to the shadowed walls and the amazing speed in the fight, Peter's duel with Hook remains one of the best sword fights in cinema, with it and the Rufio duel coming in at number 6 on my top 10 movie sword fights episode, which we seem to be knocking a few movies as full reviews off the list this season. I especially love this moment when the terrifying Hook has Peter pinned down to a sharp nerve.
When you wake up, you'll just be Peter Banning, a cold, selfish man who drinks too much, is obsessed with success, and runs and hides from his wife and children.
And though the literal powers of "you can do it" syndrome, Peter disarms the captain of his sword. But because of his compassion, he doesn't kill Hook, but instead returns the sword to his rival. To Hook, this is a massive shock, and once again shows some of his humanity for a brief moment. Until he cheats with a move that absolutely terrified me as a kid.
Dustin and Robin actually spent more time in rehearsals on this particular fight than anyone else in the film, with almost 4 to 5 months in choreography, and quite frankly, all the elements for the stunts, training, and wire work all paid off in this final showdown, eventually leading to Hook's ultimate demise in the jaws of his greatest fear come back from the dead. A scene which I still don't understand, even to this day, but Hook getting eaten was still pretty cool. So the film has enough spectacle to be enjoyed by all audiences alike, but could it have been stronger?
Well, when the film came out, despite audiences flocking to the box office that holiday season, the critics' reception does, in some respects, have its merits.
My wife is like, well, Steven Spielberg ruined you. And I was like, no, Steven Spielberg ruined Hook.
I did like Hook, yeah.
Don't just say that because you want to work
I
with the
did.
guy.
Bonnaroo or Bizzaroo or Babaloo or whatever they said in that movie. Bangarang, that's it.
A lot of the critics point out the potential of exploring the psychology of a grown-up Peter Pan and the effects of adulthood could have on a childhood who, in some respects, stayed in an ageless purgatory of Neverland for what seems like an eternity. But to some, it feels like the movie pussed out on that concept in favor of the norm. I hate to draw comparisons, but it's sort of like a lot of today's movie sequels. There's a great potential for a deeper dive into the established characters and the mythology, but passed off in favor of nostalgia and the familiar to the audience, making the viewers feel like Bill Murray in Groundhog Day, in an endless cycle of the descending fall of imagination and creativity. But honestly, unlike today's corporate Hollywood, I think this was just a case of development hell on what to do with the movie. From the studio changes to swapping out directors, the film's biggest flaw is really more the behind-the-scenes problems than the movie itself, from the writers, Steven dropping out for a short period, and even Julia Roberts apparently going through her own mental strains due to her current breakup with Kiefer Sutherland, which didn't fly well with the press at the time.
Honestly, I think with the number of changes constantly made to the production along with Steven's magic touch, fixed and saved this film from being a total disaster. Yeah, sure, they stick to the traditionalisms of the Peter Pan story, but I'll actually defend this film for staying somewhat safe and familiar because, to be honest, this was pretty much the first massive live-action production of Peter Pan to be made for the screen, and if I'm being honest, I actually prefer this movie's story over the original Peter Pan story.
I mean, yeah, there were tons of film adaptations from the early days of cinema to a pretty impressive musical starring Mary Martin as Peter Pan, but no film prior had ever attempted to bring Neverland to life on a massive scale akin to Star Wars or other big-budget films at the time. Which didn't happen until 2003 with the Universal production starring Jason Isaacs as Captain Hook. Someday I'll probably cover it because I think it's a film that doesn't get the recognition it deserves, especially with the upcoming remake by Disney, but the short version is the film is the only big budget adaptation of J.M. Barrie's work outside of Hook, and was intended to be a prequel to Steven Spielberg's epic, which has been debated by fans for years.
The next thing that's great, if this movie works, is that they should make Peter Pan, the book, and make it really as Barrie wrote it, and it'd be quite wonderful.
But it turns out to be 100% accurate. After Hook was a smash hit, the studio did consider working on a follow-up with a full-on adaptation of Peter Pan, and even Dustin Hoffman and Bob Hoskins wanting to return to add more to their respective characters, which, to be fair, Bob Hoskins did in a later adaptation. However, because Spielberg was pretty busy with other works in the 90s, the studio was getting cold feet on the idea. It didn't help that one of the film's biggest supporters, Dottie Fade and Princess Diana, sadly died in a car crash in 1997, and Dottie's father, Mohammed Al-Thaid, took on the mantle of producing the film in memory of his son and daughter-in-law, changing hands from TriStar to Universal, though Sony did take on the rights in other countries, making its behind-the-scenes development and studio connections the only link to it being a prequel to Hook.
It's me. I've just had a sublime vision.
But my point stands that because this was the first big-budget adaptation of the Peter Pan mythology, the film's production design and direction from Steven Spielberg delivered with flying colors, no pun intended, and to this day, is the definitive look of Neverland to me. It may not be the straight-up story, and does follow most of the beats when they appear, but that's what makes it so unique, and in my overall opinion, a childhood classic. So, does Hook deserve more attention after 30 years of captivating audiences around the world as one of Steven Spielberg's best movies? Well, to be honest, fuck yes! And yes, I do have it on Laserdisc. What of it?
Hook remains one of my all-time favorite films. By all accounts, it is a cinematic masterpiece, bolstered by a great cast and directed by one of the greatest filmmakers of all time. This movie more than delivers. I still have some issues with it. I think some of the Lost Boys don't really stand out. I also have some issues with the ending. I feel like they should have had a burial or something for Rufio. He was the leader of the Lost Boys in Peter's absence, yet after they defeat Hook, there is almost no mentioning of him. Peter is now an adult and he doesn't think to stick around and check to see if the kids are going to be okay. One of their best friends was just killed and Peter is just kind of up and leaves. Did he really have to leave that soon? Couldn't he have just stuck around a few minutes more? I really like Rufio and kind of wish they would have had a little ceremony for him. But aside from that, the performances of the cast is fantastic. The comedy is great, the story is simple but challenging, the action scenes and production design are great, the musical score is absolutely fantastic, capturing that sense of adventurous fun, and can get quite whimsical. The film delivers a great sense of nostalgia for those who first saw it 30 years ago, and those who have grown up on it. Watching the movie now is just as enjoyable then as it is now. In fact, I might have more of an appreciation for the film now. The ending especially hits me right in the feels now that Robin Williams is unfortunately no longer with us. Seeing his performance in this film made me really miss him and reminded me of just how talented he truly was.
Boy, why are you crying?
I don't know. Tear for every happy thought.
Much like Peter, those who saw the film for the first time have grown up and have had kids of their own, and will most likely share it with them, passing it on to the next generation. And quite frankly, the last time I watched it for this review, I actually came out moved at how much time has passed, emotionally impacted by those in the film who have since left this world, in awe of its spectacular visuals given they don't make movies like this anymore, and by all accounts, gave me a feeling of returning to my childhood in a way I haven't felt before. Much like a bottle of wine line, this film has aged perfectly and deserves to be celebrated, and given more leeway as one of Steven Spielberg's finest films, even if he doesn't like it himself, coming in at a masterful 10 out of 10. While probably not making my top 10 favorite films, it's still a masterpiece by all fronts, and to this day, still remains my favorite film adaptation of Peter Pan. So, sprinkle some pixie dust, think a happy thought, and enjoy a 30-year flight back to the magical world of Never Neverland.
To live will be an awfully big adventure.
Man, does it feel good to give Hook the recognition it deserves 30 years later. And I want to give a major thank you to JTIsReborn for joining me on this review, given it was his idea to take a look at this as a retrospective. And while you're at it, guys, go subscribe to his YouTube channel. We just helped him relaunch his review series, and he could use some much-needed viewership.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Jack. It was an absolute pleasure. I love talking about Hook. It's one of my favorite movies. It's a childhood masterpiece, and it felt good to give it some much more needed attention.
But of course, we want to hear from you, the viewers, on Steven Spielberg's Hook. Do you think it still holds up 30 years later? Or do you think there are other adaptations of Peter Pan that did the story better? Let us know in the comments section below. So join me next time on the season finale when we go from Hook vs. Pan to Godzilla vs. Kong.
Oh, what do you know? Just in time.
What's up, Sean?
I have a little something for you on the scanners here. I set them to check for any unknown or lost worlds out in the multiverse and in space, and since we're taking a look at Hook, I figured this might interest you.
Sean? Is that?
Yep. Second star to the right, and straight on till morning.
The coordinates to Neverland. Sean, how'd you find it? Those mappings have been lost since the Great War!
Well, how else would you? Just need a little faith, trust, pixie dust.
And a happy thought. Sean, you're a genius!
Why, thank you, good sir. Shall we connect you to the FTT and send you over?
Not yet. No. Remember, our power cells are barely alive. Keep an eye on that. Because there's something there we might need down the road. Sir, we have just received word that patient 92 has reached contact with outsiders. They are planning a resistance to order his release.
I am already aware of such.
Sir?
The data has already been collected on the FDT codes and the power functions at the higher authorities' command.
How is that possible, sir? We did everything to interrogate patient 92 as requested.
And time again, Dr. Stone, you have shown your incompetence and naivete. These assets are not meant to be treated as human. If left unchecked, they could be the doom of mankind, especially if their power is not in our control to harness for greater entitlement. Patient 92 will be settled accordingly. For now, the time has come to be sure that no other governs are allowed access to the tech Patient 92 has given us.
Destroy all the evidence, then.
All of it. No witnesses, other than Patient 92. Commence Order 9201. This is the higher authority's command.
Yes, sir.
Wise counsel, most wise.
My lord, the plan goes accordingly. Order 9201 will commence momentarily as requested.
Good. Now is the time to strike. See to it that the warrior is detained as the order commences, for which afterwards your department will hand him over to me.
What are the reports of Dr. Terrorot's whereabouts? You promised me his capture in exchange for Patient 92's records.
Patience, Doctor. Patience. You'll have Terrorot in your custody as promised. For now, we must prepare. Leave no stone on your department untraced. Clear out for the order. My army has begun its march. Captain Roth, the time has come. Begin your voyage to port. Your fleet is ready.
Full sail, boys! Good form calls us to the sea. And the death of Peter Pan.